Hello, everyone. This is Office Hours 38. I'm 𝗕𝗏 𝗙𝗽. I am the CEO of 𝗕liche AI. Doing some work before this. We were hustling, trying to get a description in for this this little deal book that's going to go live, and that's going to be put into in a lot of investors. So, optimizing company descriptions, asks, everything in there. Lots of fun, a little bit of adrenaline before we jumped on this call. So, thank you for everyone for bearing through that. Appreciate you all being here. I will move ahead, do a little round of introductions, and then we'll hop into some topics here today.
All right. Okay, Lauren. Hi, everyone. This is 𝗲𝗏 𝗙𝗍 CTO at 𝗕liche AI. I'm just still coming out my heartbeats. I just had a run right before a call. That's not a good idea, but I managed it. So yeah, this week was very interesting. I had a couple of things here and there on the onboarding and finding and fixing a couple of things. So yeah, looking forward to talk about a couple more topics here.
Hi, this is Lauren. I'm the accounts administrator. I've been busy with a lot of human resources, which has been lots of fun, talking to some very smart and interesting people, and looking forward to increasing the team here.
Hey, 𝗕𝗏, digital strategist here at Speak. Short week, but a very productive week, and same on this side as well. Trying to expand our content creation efforts, so that's been a fun little experiment on our end.
Yeah, I forgot it was a short week. Actually, that felt very action-packed for 4 days. So I know onboarding has been on top of mind for the whole team. Partly for good reasons that we want to bring on, and then partly for some of our own analysis and maybe some forced need to think about it. So that's what maybe I'll let you kick off some of the work that you've been doing on onboarding and some of the other thoughts you have around it.
All right. I thought we were going in a flow, but that's all good. So related to the onboarding, put some numbers. Okay, so let me give some context behind why we need the onboarding, because before, if the user onboard, it directly go to the dashboard, and the dashboard was sort of a blank UI where you don't see much data because you haven't created anything on the Speak. So that was a huge gap, even understanding about what platform can provide the value. So what that trigger is to allow users to create any action before they see the application or even the dashboard, so they at least have some insights. What is this about, and how they can create more values even for their own use cases. So we put this onboarding around in June. Sort of the version 1, I would say, because it's sort of always the iterating process. You learn, you improve, you learn, you improve. And a couple of things which we learned is like there were so many options we have put for the users. It becomes so confusing to what to choose and what not to. And if let's say if something goes wrong, they try different action, but that same thing happened. Like for an example, if they try to upload the audio, but let's say if they're trying more than 60 minutes, boom, that is done. They're not coming back on the platform again. If they try to create the recorder or the text note, and if the process doesn't go smoothly, they are not going to coming back on the platform. So there are so many different elements, and I usually always talk about the probability because that's the easiest way to convey any topic. And the probability were too high that user might not going to be able to successfully sign up. And we do have some numbers. I'm not gonna say it right now, but the numbers were high. That the percentage of the users who didn't onboard it in last 3 months or the last quarter were way more higher than we expected. So the goal for this quarter, and even we deploy this version 2 sort of this week, I say, and it's sort of a straightforward process. In our terms right now, we will see how the numbers tell, but sort of you do, the first is like what you can do on the platform. Either you can upload media, you create text note, or create embeddable recorder. That is it. That's the 3 steps either. And if any of the failed, it's like 33% probability, 1 of 3 gonna fail. And if that failed, now we know that what needs to be worked upon, what needs to be improved. And if we see for next 1.5 months that probability is around, let's say 15%, then we are going to try another option called import URL or import text note or anything, and then we'll try to play around that. So these are the inside. I'll take a break, but yeah, if any other thoughts need to include there. And also everyone was like also part of the, let's say, the onboarding version 1. So we do have a lot of research done, a lot of things has been done before we deploy. So what you guys have personally learned through that process, and moving forward, not just in this project, I would say, because it's always the project. It's like, you know, even if it's the biggest project, even if it's a company as a project, it's like what you're gonna learn and implement even in the future through this learning process. Because just last thing, because it also gets expensive if you don't reiterate quickly in many different ways. It's not expensive in terms of money. It gets expensive in terms of you losing the customer, maybe you losing the trust on onboarding. You might have wrong impression because of that one small thing has been included in the system. So yeah, the stage is open.
Yeah, in this case, I don't think we iterated quickly enough. I think it took too long. So I think that's one thing that I learned about, you know, onboarding is so important to the success of your business and having good experiences for people who are wanting to use your system. And so if we're not hyper focused and vigilant about that at all times, we're losing out on, you know, a huge chunk of, you know, obviously look at them as users, as customers, but I just also think friends, people who value what we've built and that we can work together and create more value. I think one thing that I always talked about in marketing, and then didn't live up to in prioritizing the onboarding was the too many options creates inaction. It creates like sort of analysis paralysis of like what you're going to do. And if I was like promoting to someone to create a landing page, I would say, hey, add one call to action. Don't add 11. Don't add 13. And yet in an onboarding experience, we overloaded people with options and just let them, not maybe confused, scared, unsure of the consequences of clicking on one of those actions. And in the end, what we saw was a much higher percentage of people not successfully completing that onboarding than we would have liked to see. And just one note on the URL part, there's not a surprising amount of people, but with URLs, often people are just grabbing, I would say, a YouTube video, and often those videos are over 60 minutes. So our own limitation that we've put on the free trial for the 60 minutes is actually creating friction in that sign up. So, you know, I'm interested to see as we've enabled just media uploads, if that's, you know, positive or detrimental, because that URL grabbing is a valuable piece. But I'm guessing there's less people with 60-minute recordings directly on their computer than what we've seen from the length of URLs that someone just grab on a YouTube video.
Yeah, the people who have been onboarding, when it comes to actually like uploading some piece of media, like where do you find like the majority of the people, like what do they upload mostly? Like, is it audio, video, or even text? Like what do people usually, move towards?
Yeah, what we saw is like the upload media has the highest percentage in terms of going through the onboarding. The second one was like creation of the text note. The third one was like the import URL and the recorder, vice versa. It changed month to month. But we see there's a huge difference between the upload media and the import URL if you compare the numbers. It's not like 49-50. It was like, I would say 1-50 or 2-50.
Yeah. So people already kind of have an idea of like what they want to be uploaded onto the software before they're even really into it. So they already have like an idea of what they're going to use it for. So maybe it's thinking along the lines of, I have lots of media here that's more than 60 minutes. Maybe it's not a matter of they're only giving me 60 minutes for like the free trial. Maybe it's like they can't handle more than 60 minutes on the file uploads.
Well, and 𝗲𝗏 did an excellent job on the marketing part, where some of those searches and signups are coming from someone literally saying, convert audio to text. like that's, or like upload, upload MP3 and get transcript, like very, action or intent oriented ones where they have a file or something that they're coming with into the system. And so we're trying to make that as smooth as possible. And just in general, some of the best systems that I've seen, like onboarding is not a challenge, or it's an educational experience that then sort of delights you and gives you more value. And what I think we saw from our onboarding is it actually became a little bit of a chore or a challenge or a difficulty, the opposite of what we wanted it to be. And so simplification in that way is always meaningful. And just again, try not to, sometimes as a company, you're trying to get things out of it that you want. But we can't look at it through that lens. It's like, how can we make this amazing for the person who's having their first experience on the app? So I think for us to be more empathetic, to switch the mindset from what we want to what our customers need and how we can help them is important, especially as we continue to iterate on the changes that we're making here.
To Lauren's point, though, is there because it's 60 minutes isn't our maximum. Like, for example, if someone has a subscription, they do have the option to upload up to, I don't know, 4 hours, right? So to his point, like I kind of understand the reason we kind of limited it to 60 minutes because that's the free trial limit.
Yep.
But would there be a way for us? Because I know what a lot of let's say other platforms that do this do is if you upload beyond the maximum allowed time, like for example, I think like 𝗵𝗵𝗁 like 15 minutes free or something, right? And it will basically charge you for the remaining amount or let you know that the remaining amount would be like a cost associated with you, right? Obviously, I'd imagine that would require building in a separate kind of like module into the system to do that. But I feel like that maybe that could be part of like a future onboarding where if people are coming in for the free trial, but they are uploading files over 60 minutes, that's one way of letting them know, hey, we can do this. It's just you will have to pay for the time beyond 60 minutes, right? Because yeah, maybe there are people who are coming in uploading, because I think we've had a couple questions where people asked, oh, like, can you guys do like files over an hour, right? So maybe something like that could get that message across and potentially lead to, even if it's just like a little bit of revenue on our end as well.
Maybe another solution too for that is to not just say, your 60 minutes are, you only get 60 minutes on the free trial. Maybe it's more like your first upload is free. And then after that, while you're still on the free trial, if you want to upload any more, then you have to pay like an additional, the additional amount, or you can just buy a subscription and then you can have a preloaded amount there. Because that way people aren't blocked by like the 60-minute limit. Because if they do, like, I can't imagine people are going to be putting in something greater than 4 hours unless they're trying to put in like 𝗕𝗿𝗃. I think that's a movie that's like 20 hours long. But that's probably not going to likely happen. So like, it's not even that bad. It's not that huge of a cost for us. Just when they're like doing lots and lots every month to month. But like the first one, I think we can be pretty lenient. At least like look at it like more of like the first upload as opposed to like the first 60 minutes,
I feel like there's, yeah, that's definitely another way to go about it. I guess the issue there is like, are the majority of our users uploading, long enough files that they wouldn't feel kind of cheaped out on, right? So if someone is uploading, let's say 45-minute or 50-minute one-time upload, or even like a 2-hour one-time upload, great, that would be a great thing for them. But if someone's doing like 10 minutes, right? And then it's like, okay, 10 minutes and you're done, right? Is that enough of an incentive for them to stay as well? But, the flip side is if our true target audience are people with these giant files that they're trying to get transcribed, then it could definitely work that way as well.
I like it. I think, just in our mind, we want to treat everyone fairly. And I think we do see a lot of people who are uploading, I would say, small clips. Within 60 minutes, if you can upload, you can upload 100 files as long as they're short enough. And that's a lot of value that we're producing there for them. So I think just trying to balance it, but I think it's a good proposal. And it's a way, again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce friction on that initial sign up. So anything that we can do to help that. I think one thing that came out that emerged was the opposite of that, actually, which was some people were using the in-app recording and they were submitting files that were too short. And so we actually had a limit on how short a file could be. And that created a barrier too. And that was something that we didn't necessarily expect and was indicative of another thing, a larger theme to me, which was that people were just trying to get through the onboarding. Not necessarily valuing the onboarding. The recording was like, okay, this is my quickest way so that I can get into.
But then to do what?
That's what I mean.
And that those dots are not connecting technically. It's like if you want to open the door as quickly as possible, but once you enter into the house, to do what?
Maybe they already have an idea. Maybe they already have experience with other transcription software, so they already have a understanding of how it should work, possibly. But is there an option to like skip the onboarding altogether and just move on into the actual platform? Because that's a good way of ensuring people at least get onto the platform. Because if they're just stuck on onboarding, then they just leave, then that's
there are ways, but why we can't do, I can say, is like because a lot of dots are connected with the onboarding. It's like the marketing campaign is connected with that based on the actions they do. If they doesn't onboard, there's the whole messaging part we send them or use that mechanism for them. And even for if we go back to one step back, is like for this in-app recording. I mean, what I see is like if most of them are using the phone, if they are using the in-app recorder, they mostly are coming from the phone devices or the small devices. And out of 10, I would say the 7 of them were using or recording only less than 5 seconds. Why? Only they can answer, but what they are doing on the platform, that I can tell. So that was very interesting observation. It's like most of them, if they do the in-app recording, they're using their phone or probably tablet, and they do record less than 5 to 10 second clip, which is now, it was like 15-second clip, now reduced to the 5 second, based on the observation. So
yeah, I don't know. We didn't really talk that much about like, for example, can you skip the onboarding but still need to submit the onboarding form to get in, like, so that we can still get a little bit of details on how they're maybe give the option of, hey, I'm an expert in managing media, let me skip through, or I don't know what the impact is on for us, because one of the things I think we also talked about, some of the research that you helped us with, which was identified the true users of the application. Not true, that's not really the right word, but like they were pretty technical people, a lot of them. So if we're, again, sort of this idea of treating our users like they don't know how to upload a media file when we're in 2021, and like maybe we're babying our users too much, and it's actually just creating friction and undermining them. I think most people are, for some reason, the metaphor or the visualization for it coming to me is like in Age of Empires or Empire's Earth. Sorry if you don't get this reference. You like start in a map and you cannot see the whole map illuminated. And you're sort of walking through the dark and you're not really sure what's coming. And I think people, they're just trying to understand the entire package or offering of what we have. And I think we thought that by giving them an upload or their own information, like their personal information, or a text file or audio, created more value because they got to see the analysis on something that was theirs, and that created more value. But we've also seen some conflicting results with that. So
yeah, we made these changes for this week. So let's track them down and see how does that go, how does that perform, what the version 3 looks like, and what needs to be improved. So that's what we can say in the conclusion for this point.
I guess I'll move on to something that I think is related to this then, which is something that we talked about before, I think, but this idea of just like product market fit and how valuable is your product to customers. And sometimes I've definitely had moments in conversations where I felt, oh, we are on the right path here because I know what this person's going to say. Well, and then they said it. And those people end up becoming, customers, annual licenses and subscriptions. And those are really beautiful moments. And then other times you have sort of what some of the real feeling of my feeling was this week, where we have a lot of people coming in to test out the system. Some of them, maybe some of the impact of this is just struggling to get through sort of the sign up or onboarding, or not having as much as an incentive to continue to revisit the platform. But like, there's a lot of people who are signing up, doing some test uploads, playing around with the system, and then not maybe finding enough value to continue paying or continue using and then subscribing. And that's something that I think we want to figure out. And the idea here is that before you can actually scale a business, before you can scale your marketing efforts, you really have to have a product that is sticky, that is valuable enough, that's solving a pain point. And I believe it's Mark Anderson, I believe he's talked about like a hair on fire problem, basically. Like this is solving such a big problem, like that I'm very happy to pay for it. And until we solve that, if we continue our marketing efforts, we're just going to drive users through who churn and don't find value. So part of this effort is, how do we measure if we have acquired product market fit? And if not, then how do we iterate until we get there? So just, quickly, just to give some context to that. So really classic survey, I believe it was by Sean Ellis who originally made it, who said, if you put out a survey and under 40% of your users don't say they'd be very disappointed if your platform no longer existed, that means that you do not have product market fit. And so this is an initiative that I think is really important for us to undertake right now, because we're seeing good signals and growth, but we're also seeing, signals that there are some things that we need to improve in our system. And a lot of that might include UI and UX, messaging, and even just functionality that we choose to add next to the system to create more value and solve problems better. So I'll stop there for a second. There's a couple other interesting questions that come out that are sort of follow-up questions to that main metric. And what I hope to do is figure out together how we can incentivize. We need about 40 minimum users to fill out this survey to give us some feedback on it.
Do you think like having a net promoter score is a good enough, like an equal enough to that metric? Just thinking that's probably a bit easier for people to understand, I suppose, to like, think about whether or not they would share it, as opposed to like how well they could get off without it. I don't know, maybe just another way of rewording the question. But that's also a pretty important metric to be following. And it kind of a bit more, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, net promoter score.
Go quickly, so just so you can see these this is basically the survey and how it's laid out. So how would you feel if you could no longer use the product? And then very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed. I'm sharing the right screen, right?
Yes.
I no longer use your product, right? So where do they fall into this? And then there's a follow-up question. Please help us understand why you selected that answer. And then they put it in a text box. So hopefully you can get some more qualitative responses of why you're no longer using that product. And then then the second bigger question is like, what would you use as an alternative? So if your product or service is not available, I wouldn't use, or I would use. So this is also where you would start to see sort of some of your competitors and alternatives emerge. And then the other following questions are more open-ended. Main benefit, what type of person do you think would benefit most? How can we improve your product name? Product to best meet your needs, what motivated you? So why using or buying it? So I think, what I said here was the type form seems to be the most intuitive kind of solution to get results like that. That's a lot of questions to ask. So I think the incentive needs to be high enough, and you need to make sure that also people aren't answering those questions in a poor way just to get the incentives, which is what we sort of saw with some of the research that we did, is people will sign up to get, $60 or an Amazon gift card, because everyone wants an Amazon gift card. So trying to make sure that we are getting the right people to answer, and valuable answers out of that is another challenge. But how can we build this into our product, not just once, but on an ongoing iterative basis, in a way that incentivizes users to give us feedback, and be pretty ruthless with classifying these results and then figuring out what we need to do next to enhance the value of our platform.
I remember at one point too, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I think 𝗣𝗲𝗄 had put a rating system on a lot of the pages as well. I was curious if that was in use at all, or like you think that actually sending people emails and long lists of questions are a better alternative than like rating systems and 1 out of 10 or thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing.
That would definitely help. I think so. It was like last year around when we were around less than 1,000 user. So I mean, and even not that many subscriber, I would say. So there was very rare chance that we would have some quality feedback, and there was no incentive for submitting the form. So there is always the challenge. I don't know for other company, but at least for us at this moment to find the good relative feedback, because let's say we did with the 𝗬𝗏𝗃 and 𝗬𝗏𝗃 research, and they did the interview with a couple of customer. It's like still who for example for the next round, who are those customers? Are we sending to everyone, or are we sending to the people who are subscribed on the platform, or are we gonna send them based on their job title? What does that look like? And the second question toward is like what is going to be the outcome? What are the 3 things we will get out of it based on that? And we're going to make some changes. It's like what are we looking at? Is that the product market fit is the goal, but what are the objective? Because that goes to the, they want to subscribe for the platform, they're not going to churn out, they find more value compared to XYZ. So yeah, those are the things just thinking about.
Basically, there's this idea of, especially in an early stage company, there's only really 2 stages: pre-product market fit and post-product market fit. And you can lose product market fit if you make wrong decisions. And there's still like concern, still different definitions that are given, but the 40% one in that survey is one of the ones that is really provided. But the other one is your money in your bank is piling up and your customers are piling up. And so many of your new customers are coming through referrals that you can't even handle the volume. And we're continuing to grow, but we're not hitting that pace. You know what I mean? Like I would love that, in the next quarter that we're overwhelmed by customer demand. And how do we get there? We need to figure out some things. And I think that's one thing that sticks out to me, which is, again, I've probably talked about that before, but that's what I remember maybe at the end of last year, we're like, we just want to get some feedback. We just want people to be using this system and valuing it. And we started to see that a lot more this year. But it's like we just have a bunch of people on our team who care a lot about this and just want to help. And for us to be able to have that opportunity, we need to make decisions here with what we're doing, but we need to build and message properly so that people know that we're the right people to ask for that help from.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to give some numbers, for example, it is surprising for me, at least on my end, is like in September, we had around 269 users signed up. Out of that, 50 customer or users are coming from the education/student. So it's like, almost. So, I mean, that's a huge number who is coming as either the job title is a student or coming through the education field. So how does that look like? And that was very interesting. And even in August, we have around 273 sign up and 51 people coming from the education or student as a student. So, I mean, does that impact anything on the feedback side?
Yeah, is that the highest like market demographic then, you think?
And I would say maybe volume of signups, but not revenue contributed to the system, and that's a big difference for us as we try to grow. I really like the one question in the survey, which is, what type of person do you think would benefit most from the product? I think that's really interesting. And, because if say you're a student, you self-identify as, I'm a student and this gives me the most valuable if I got unlimited minutes, or X, or if it didn't fit your needs or the problem you were trying to solve, it's asking you to imagine the person who it would solve that problem for. And there could be a lot of information and clarity that comes out of that for how we fell short for our offering, but then where people believe that there is value within the system. So.
Yep.
Any thoughts, marketer slash man who one day will be a full holistic product marketer? And what do you think?
It's tough, right? I think finding product market fit is, and keeping it is always the dream of any company, right? Whether tech or otherwise. How to get there, I think, is the true challenge sometimes. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like with the whole concept of product market fit and getting to that point, right? There's no real gauge for like how fast or how fast you should get there, or how slow is at what point are you getting there too slowly, right? It's like, what's the timeline of that? Is it a year, 2 years, 5 years, right? It's, if you haven't found product market fit, but somehow your company is still functioning and you're still, bringing in revenue, you're still kind of grinding on. Is that also a win? Is that a semblance of product market fit, or are you still just doing whatever you need to do to stay afloat, right? And I feel like sometimes I'm not very clear on what that necessarily means for us as a company either. Because it's like if obviously product market fit is important to scale, but I don't know if it necessarily has to define an entire organization or an organizational success, right? Once again, it depends on your bigger dreams and where you see the company growing to.
I think exactly. I think it just depends on your aspirations as a company. Because one of the things that is talked about especially in early stages of finding product market fit is, and this is something that you delightfully talk about, maybe not delightfully, but very narrow your focus, pick a niche, and go hard on a company and on a very, very specific, very, very, very painful problem. And that's what allows the scale to happen, right? Because everything becomes so repeatable. And then you see, I think, the opposite, which is sometimes what we see is like a company, maybe a more consultative company. You see them all the time where it's like an agency or research firm where they're serving multiple industries and they're still growing their business. They're doing good work. Maybe they're not necessarily going for 1,000% year-over-year product growth, and they actually like the uniqueness of some of the projects that they take on is actually a driver for why they're in the business. Like a research firm likes doing X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. But, one of the examples that's really sort of outspoken on this idea of product market fit was the guys who created Superhuman and how much time they spent testing before they even went into production to get these metrics around product market fit before they actually released publicly and started to scale. And so I guess it really does depend on the aspirations of the business and what you're trying to accomplish. I think everyone wants to grow quicker and faster. And that's definitely an aspiration as a software company that you're trying to figure out. And just lastly, like the feedback that you often get, it's interesting because especially if you're talking to investors, they're investing at different levels, investing at different risks profiles. But if a company has determined that they're reached product market fit through, say, measure or something like this, an investor at that point knows they can dump money into that company and it's just going to generate returns. Whereas if you're pre-product market fit, you're struggling to retain customers are churning, your net revenue retention is low. You're a much bigger risk at that point to make an investment. And if you put money in, that money might not go anywhere. So from a confidence standpoint, whether we inject any capital into the business, I think we're pretty confident right now in the kind of things that we want to do. But if we could start to focus on some of these underlying metrics, the net revenue retention, cost per acquisition, churn rate, these things, we can be very confident in the next steps that we need to take and be able to communicate that outwardly and also really radically prioritize the development that we're doing.
Just to your point too about just diving deep after, let's say, a very high pain point, like a very not strong pain point. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a very big pain point, very painful pain point.
Painful, terrifying, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a paralyzing pain point. It's like sometimes you don't even need to do all the, like, if using Superhuman as an example. I'm sorry, maybe it's part of it is just I'm literally not their target audience, but you're paying $30 a month. I don't know if they've increased their price, but you're paying $30 a month to use Gmail, right? And it's like I understand they have like all their little features and stuff built into there that maybe I don't see value from. You know, these CEOs and C-suite executives are finding value from, and they're very willing to pay $300 a year to save an hour of their time, because 1 hour of their time is worth $1,000 or $2,000, whatever it is, right? So I feel like that's definitely one business model you can follow, right? Just go after, even if you look at things in the marketing realm, you know, you have things like direct to consumer or just high ticket sales, where, you know, do you want to work for Walmart and try to sell, you know, 2 million $5 t-shirts, or do you want to work for Rolex and sell, you know, 10 like $50,000 watches? Like what's the kind of market you're going after? What's the messaging that goes into those things? And it almost gets to the point where if your target audience is wealthy enough or kind of has the expendable capital, I feel like that's a very easy market to break into versus you know, places where budget is always at top of mind. So you know, like I know we talk about things like going after enterprise or just larger client bases, because, you know, they don't really care about how much it's going to cost them. They care about how much, you know, like money will it save them, or how much like time will it save them, right? Like the cost isn't the prohibitive factor for a lot of these companies. And I think we've seen that with some of the maybe certain clients or certain leads that we've had, where, you know, there's a lot of negotiation over, let's say, like a 5% decrease or something. While when you flip that coin and you look at the enterprise clients we've had, if anything, they were willing to pay us more to even, you know, reduce their workload by like 30 minutes, right? Yeah. Which I think is definitely an interesting parallel.
When you touched on, I mean, I think something that's really interesting, which, you know, something I think about a lot, which is like a branding perspective, and something that Superhuman had in their execution plan was going after these sort of high profile people that were influential. And that drove a lot of the adoption of Superhuman. I'm with you. I've never used it, so I don't know how groundbreaking it is. I don't truly get the exact type of it. My Gmail is fine. Maybe I'm missing out on a lot of things that could be better for my life. I remember when Rome Research was going through a little bit of their hype cycle, and people would buy their $500 believer plan, and you would see a tweet of saying, I just heard of Rome Research today. I don't know what they do, but everyone's talking about it, so I bought the believer plan. And they hadn't even tested the platform. It's like the power of that is very strong. And, you know, it's something that I would like to, I don't want to maybe go towards the cult-like,
mouth-to-mouth marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that, and, you know, I don't think we're definitely not there. There's two sides of that, which is note them out just from what we're trying to do is aspirational, inspirational, and it's driving people. Like that was something that drove, that's what was so curious about Rome Research was overall, everyone would complain about the UI, UX, sort of the experience, that people persevered through it because of sort of the excitement around what they were trying to do. I would like to be the opposite. I would like to be both the excitement around what we're doing and then providing the product experience.
That's not the controllable situation, though. That's not in your control either. That's not in anyone's hand.
It's not possibly, but there seems to be approaches that are necessary or have been, you know, we look at, for again, the raise of Copy AI this week and the traction that they've grown in such a short time.
Yeah.
The same thing that Rome Research did, they leveraged Twitter and started to really grow virally through that platform. And when 𝗕𝗄𝗄 did I listened to their live sort of audio chat after. Every single employee that they had, every single customer that they even brought up to speak had the way they had heard about 𝗕𝗄𝗄 was Twitter. And that was, I mean, not that I'm saying that that's what you need to do, but there's a pattern that emerges from how you expand your reach much quicker than maybe what we've done in the past.
I sort of agree, but I would partially agree with that because, I mean, for example, each company are unique in their own way, and they find their own product market fit in different ways. There is not, because let's say we follow the different trends and stuff, and let's say because 𝗕𝗄𝗄 or the Rome research had some sort of a hype early this year because of the Twitter. So now all the companies need to just copy them or replicate them. I mean, they definitely have their own different background. They are coming from their own different teams, different research, different market, and everything. So I don't know. To me, it's like it depends on your as a company. It's their own uniqueness. It's like how do you find the product market fit? It's like there's one interesting part is like put your website down for a day and see how many people complain. Out of 10, how many people complain? 40. That it is. You don't need to do the research. Just kidding, but
I would say, I mean, not to get stuck on that, but I would argue what we've seen is an example, possibly with Rome research, of a company losing product market fit, because they had actually had so many people who were early adopters and were excited about the innovation. And when Rome research couldn't keep up with that innovation, they actually moved to log sequence or Obsidian. And with that, they took the communities with them that produced the value of Rome research and, a bunch of other sort of peripheral effects, and had, impact on the brand and everything there. So, it's just an interesting thing to watch. And what I hope is that if we can continue to sort of focus on these onboarding and a beautiful user experience, and then delivering on I think the true part for what we need to deliver on is the value of the insights that we're trying to derive, and giving people ways to generate those for themselves, share those. That's where we need to continue to grow, because that's where the referrals, that's where the word of mouth will come from. I just want to quickly ask, for you guys, like, when you look back at all the people who have onboarded, even if your own interactions with Speak, what, when it comes to you, like, what do you think is the most painful problem that Speak is currently solving?
in my view, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay. To me, what will always be the most painful part is like the workflow. And the workflow, you can have the transcription in different product. There is no question for sure. It's pretty common sense. But the workflow, the management of the whole process solves the problem and save your time, save your money, pull a lot of resources out in good way as a company, but also that also help you to create more revenue or save your time. And the workflow is way more important right now, even for us to build more on top of that and get to the point where the whole process for our customer is smooth. Because if you just pick one individual point, you're gonna find way better companies who does in the market. No question, they would definitely have more customer, more revenue. There's no debate on that. But when you combine the whole solution, I mean, in my view, it's always going to be going to create more values, because there are so many examples. I don't know if you guys, and if you use Zoho, but Zoho has so many different modules and the integrations which will solve for a lot of problem. Intercom, it's like we all use intercom. It's like, why, let's say there was a drift, but there are so many modules were missing. So do you think drift has not the good chat technology, that it was delaying the message? No, it was perfect by technology wise, but what solves the problem is the full end-to-end solution, in my view.
I would say like the actual the human transcription part as well is a pretty big pain point. I think that what we're the solution that we have put together, even just like not so much like for human transcribers, like shifting on the workload of someone else, but like even just I found it very very helpful for me to bring up like our own transcripts, just like in the app. That's something that's really been the most noticeable for me, anyways. When it's actually like the actual inputs and how much of a how easy it is for for you to transcribe your own work, really. Like sure, there's lots of like automation going on there, so there's a lot of like work that gets done without you even really touching things. But when it comes to the actual work that you just know, like it gets to the point where there's no way of working around it when you actually have to input it yourself. I think that we did a really good job, actually, with the UI UX there. It could be cleaned up. It could be just like little nitpicks here and there, but overall, I think it's a pretty good experience. And that seems to be like the biggest pain when it comes to transcription is actually getting, moving on from automation to the actual perfect, human transcription.
Yeah, I think, with an end-to-end solution, sometimes comes the issue of crossing that like that barrier of understanding for a lot of people, right? Because to your point about copy AI, for example, like what they were able to leverage was, yes, there was the whole public space and building public that they did, but they took, something, a novel, super marketable technological innovation that gave a very defined output, right, for a very specific group of individuals. And it's very simple. Like they're like, here, they don't even explain what it is. Like, oh, here's a GPT-3 AI that generates blog copy for you, right? Like that's their whole marketing pitch, right?
The question is like, what do you think? How easy is going to be to replicate that? I know they obviously raised, I think so, 13 or
$11 million.
Yeah, $11 million.
Yeah.
So it's like, for example, I don't know how they raise, because it's like, oh, have you built this technology by your own? No, we are using GPT-3. It's like, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but that's another topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting. Sorry, because I hopped on for a little bit yesterday. I think they had like a Twitter Spaces or something. And the one thing that their head of product brought up was, obviously right now people are using us. We give them general guides. They use us to generate these outputs, and then they take those outputs and kind of have a whole bunch of work that they do after the fact, right? And I think one of the points he said is, how do we more or less get rid of that after the fact for the user? Like instead of them still having to do work, how do we basically do everything for them, right? And it definitely fits into, this whole building a system for people where they can get all their jobs kind of done in one place in a relatively seamless manner, right? So if someone needs transcription, obviously they'll come in for the automated to save that initial cost. Then they can do the cleanup. Then they can build the media libraries. Then they can access the data. And then, the next step would then be, is there a way for us to actually help them with the almost like the post-production, right? Or the production, right? Because right now I still think that production element is where a lot of people, as much as it sucks, like obviously all these steps are crucial to enabling that production. But I think a lot of people, at least in the general sphere, don't see prep as valuable as like an output, right? At least that's my perception of it. Like I think people undervalue. It's the reason people undervalue the cost of transcription, for example, right? Because it's a very preparatory thing, right? It's, oh, I'm transcribing this podcast in order to then create a blog post, in order to then upload it to YouTube, in order to then do XYZ, right? But they don't actually see the act of getting a transcript as truly valuable.
Doesn't it start with the opposite? Isn't it like what does that mean? Is like, isn't it like, okay, I want to publish my library, I wanted to clean up the transcription. Isn't it start with that goal and then they need to do the process? Or it's like what you said is like it's a process and then they find create the public library or create a blog or anything. But isn't it reverse? It's like they know what there needs to be done and the platform does support that.
It supports it. Yes, it definitely supports the goal, but it doesn't help them achieve the, like, it's kind of like, for example, when we're talking about qualitative research and the qualitative research process, right? At this point, we help, let's say, clean up data sets, right? But our actual capabilities in terms of helping them do the actual research is not quite there yet, right?
I had a conversation with that research firm last week about this, and they, it was interesting. He asked at the end was, so if we dump all this media in, will your system give us basically the executive summary? He's basically trying to replace himself completely out of the process, because right now he's manually looking at everything, and then he's writing this executive summary that is being part of the final presentation. And so we know that we're not necessarily sufficient in that process, but we actually know the outcome that they're trying to get to. And we know that that's a very painful process. And like you can hear in describing that, how annoying and frustrating that is. And even, a couple of changes on a transcript, can be to try to get to that final output where you can make that executive summary accurate, concise, compelling, valuable. And along with that, a summary came some quotes, some clips, and some other things for them to be able to make their point. And, I guess looking at that process, I touched on that before, but one thing I think about is speed. And, I'll look at, I guess the pain points, that I want to help, figure that out is the speed part. And, when you're doing research, you're processing a lot of information and you're trying to produce results and analysis. And at one point, I wanted to do that and I was actually incapable of doing that. And I feel like we're now getting closer to doing that with Speak. And it was really nice to hear we did some one-on-ones this week, was like feeling a little bit more confident. Obviously we have some things to figure out in onboarding, but the platform is delivering value in some ways. But, we touched on that description we just did. We included the word no code in it. And I think that's because there's a lot of people who want to be able to have the ability to do these things and they can't. And that's a really painful process when you don't actually have the ability to do it, or if you can't, you have two options. It's either find a solution. Those solutions can often be very expensive. It could be software platforms. It could be hiring someone, or you're going to have to invest the time to figure out how to do it yourself. If you don't know how to code, if you don't know how to do it, then you're stuck, and I think that's where a lot of people often feel about this process. And when we've been able to deliver, there is this gap because there's technical large teams that can do this themselves, but there's a layer underneath who don't have that capacity. And those are the people who truly find value within our system because they realize how much value we're creating, how complex it actually is, and how much it would cost for them either financially or through time to achieve the same purpose. So the more that we can support that, I think that's where we need to hone in on. And it comes back to speed and just giving people the ability. Like it sucks when you can't do something and you feel hopeless about a task. And if we can help solve that through our system, then we will win in the end and we'll create a lot of value for people. We're at time here. I just want to show. Go ahead.
Just the last point I want to add is like the speed workflow, the integration, the time is the one part, but that also gets quickly go away if we don't produce the quality of the insight. So the quality is the another factor that plays if any similar company does the whole end-to-end process. So that could be the transcription, that could be the insight. So once we get there, the quality is going to be the whole next chapter to figure out.
Yes, I think what people want, I mean, talk a little about that before is like the oil refinery. It's like you just throw something in and then like magic comes out. And it's like, oh my God, breakthrough, throw. And, let's, continuing to try to work. I just want to show one thing before this, before we end this. This is sort of confusing to look at. So I apologize if this is like the last thing, but I think it's a very interesting thing. And it's talking about, we're talking about though, sort of back to this idea of product market fit, but he, you know, it was basically talking about the stage that it is, and then what grade you would be at depending on sort of the metrics that you're measuring here. And I'm still sort of picking apart this because it seems actually, you know, quite complex. And again, I apologize for ending on this, but just like, again, like percentage of top of funnel who become paid customers. You know, what is an A plus? So if we're saying 10%, you know, 10% of people who sign up for Speak then become customers. I think we're quite far away from that metric now. I think we would be C to D, just got to get on that. And so this guy is very knowledgeable. I shared this tweet with you guys and I'll revisit it. I just wanted to share this quickly. I guess any thoughts as you look at this? I know it is sort of complex to think about, but anything that sticks out for you? Probably didn't set it.
I'd love to do it eventually.
Yeah.
Put down our result and our grades and see how we are. I haven't heard of these stages before, like the magic and the habit stage. That's a nice way of putting it. Should we like go backwards, do you think? And like stage as in like the life cycle stage. So do we have to like go back? Because like, yeah, I guess we have to do all the pre-seed stuff and then seed after we've done first round of investment.
Yeah, he talked about investment, but it's just goals as a company here as well too. So we were saying, for example, day 7 retention and then day 30 retention. What is that? And if you have 80% retention, you are in the A category, like you are, I mean, I should swear, but crushing it in terms of retention, and you're actually building your product into a habit. So we've seen, I would say, small indicators of that with certain subsegments or certain customers who use our system every day, every single day. Other ones, though, we're seeing a person come, you know, average visits per week. They're not even on 3, they're on 1 visit a week. So again, I know this is a lot of information to sort of look at. I thought this would be an interesting resource for anyone who watches these or anything too, but I just read the tweet thread that led to this and then this display, and I was like, this is a pretty mind-blowing thing. This guy has got it down to a science. And just something pretty aspirational for us to sort of look at and how we measure our success as a product, hopefully a product.
You know how they put the number, what's the research behind it?
Yeah, where's this from? Who did this?
It's the source of the truth nowadays. No, I'm just kidding. But it's like, how they prove these numbers? It's pretty good tracking to be honest. Track.
1 second. It was John Banner writes about early stage startups, and he was like he's a board member at Lambda. He did, and then he said three times founder with 3 exits. I forget one of the big ones there.
SF.
Ton of followers, pretty well. Like just from reading, obviously you have to validate, but like when you read what he's writing, it's like, oh man, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do. I think we could do that like on a monthly basis and see what our grade is month to month.
Yeah,
that'd be neat.
That would be a nice way to track or get even our own feedback. It's like how everyone is doing.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I know. I was glad. Hey, cool. So I thought that was like I took a risk by showing that at the end of this.
No, because what I found is like hard work is not going to help you to reach the product market fit. So it is not the physical work. It's like if you're putting 25, whatever, it's not going to help. It's need the strategy tracking metrics.
I agree with that. I've worked hard for a very long time. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're progressing that much. Okay, it's 1:04. Any thoughts before we close this out?
Oh, pretty good.
Okay.
Might see the next officer in the different country, probably.
Oh, yes.
Do you have Ethernet or Wi-Fi?
Oh yeah, pretty cool setup.
Okay, nice.
What time will it be? So it'll be, give us the time that you'll be on when we're doing our office hours.
It's going to be around 10:30, probably. 10:35. I mean, basically 9:30 to 10:30.
That's not too bad. Okay, well, yes, 𝗲𝗲𝗁 taking a well-deserved trip back to India. It's been too long since he's been able to see his family. So very excited for him, and we'll miss him here in Toronto, but we know he's doing good things in India. So, okay, anyone who, go ahead. Yeah, good, good, all right. Anyone who watched, listened, read, whatever you do, however you ingest this form of media, thank you. Thank you for all the support, 𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃. We really do appreciate it, and hope you have a wonderful weekend.
All right.